inspiring, educating, and offering hope for families like yours. This is the Family Healing Room with Dr. Sonja Sutherland, a licensed counselor for 21 years and now a professor of counseling. Dr. Sonja wants you to know that your family can be stronger, your marriage can be peaceful and loving, and that safe, open, and enjoyable relationships with your sons or daughters is possible. And now, here's today's show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Family Healing Room. We're glad that you're joining us today. I'm here with Brian and Ashley Anderson, talking about family relationships and the principles that they have implemented that make their family strong. Brian and Ashley, welcome to the Family Healing Room.
Hey, how are you,
Hey,
Dr. Sutherland?
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I'm doing well, and I hope you're doing well too. I guess the first question that I have for you is why you said yes when I invited you to the Family Healing Room.
Well, first of all, because it's you. You're very persuasive. No, I would say because I have tremendous respect for what you do, what you've done in your past work, and then also because I know that whatever it is that you are putting together is going to help a lot of people. And if we can be one tiny little minute, contribution to it, then great, wonderful, then it may help other families out there. So we have a lot of respect for you and all the work that you've done.
Well, I appreciate your saying that, and I appreciate your willingness to do it. And I think you're right. It will help a lot of people. And I invited you because I've watched you. I see how you interact with each other. I see how you interact with your children. And I think that a lot of what you do and how you came to that will be super helpful for people to hear. So I guess let's go ahead and kind of launch into that. What is one family principle that you have implemented, that you've discovered through the course of your relationship, that is extremely helpful in helping you build a strong family?
You want to kick us off, Ashley?
Well, we've been blessed to have some fantastic mentors who have a very healthy and thriving family who took us under their wing and have just kind of like taught us things. But something that we have really tried to do is, model versus just talk, because kids, I've found, will do what you do and not what you say.
That's for sure.
So we've really worked hard to really act more so as farmers and plant seed by showing them, for instance, if we pray with them, they learn how to pray. If we use our utensils and don't talk with our mouths full and don't yell at each other and respect one another, and they see that, then they are going to display the same behavior because they're such modelers, and so that's been a principle that has been really big with our family, is modeling, showing, not telling, but showing. And so, we've heard, and we go by this too, that principles govern success. When you live by principles, that it's your foundation. So that's something that we really wanted for our family, is we didn't want to just tell things. We wanted to actually walk the walk, and not, just not talk, but walk the walk, and let that be the standard for the family.
Hey, I'm sure you want us to be real here, but a great example of that is, if our kids are yelling at each other and then I raise my voice and yell at them to stop yelling, she's like, why are you yelling at them? You just told them to stop yelling.
That's true, right? Because
right?
That's so confusing for them.
Even if you raise your voice a little bit, that's what you're doing. So
yeah. They'll do what you do versus what you say.
Yeah. So much of what you said has rich components in it. I wanted to talk about how you described it. You said you're like farmers sowing a seed. And when you think about that visual of farmers sowing a seed, what I think about is that it takes time to get the result. It takes time to grow. You plant the seed, but you water and you water and you fertilize and you do all these kinds of things before you get that end result that you're actually hoping for.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that process, the watering, the fertilizing. What else goes into modeling that you've seen? And you, Brian, you talked about how it's a process, because even though you know that's what you want to do and you know that's what you want to model, sometimes it doesn't actually work as immediately as you desire it to.
That's right. Well, just like you can't force something to grow, it's either going to grow or it's not, right? You are a part of the process, but you are not the only, like, you're not the process, right? And I think a lot of times in parenting, I know I learned this, like, unfortunately, your first child is always the one you practice everything on, but whether you intend to or not. But a lot of times when you're early on in a parenting role, you kind of you're always like very controlling, right? And you're trying to make everything perfect. And then if you have a second child, you loosen up a little bit. And then if you have a third child, like
you don't have to wash the pacifier,
right?
Like with the second
exactly,
child, it's the floor.
Right. By the time you get to number 3 or number 4, like, or our friends have like 5 kids, for instance, it just is completely different.
We don't have 5 kids.
Right. We have 3. So, but you start to realize that, okay, we're a huge part of it, but we are not in control of it. We cannot control their behavior. We can influence, but we cannot control it. And here's the thing about farming is they're consistent, right? They're consistently doing the same thing day in and day out, and they're not doing major changes. The environment might change, right? A storm might come along, or a drought might happen, or it might rain too much, which again, I can't control, but I'm consistently going to do what I need to do to make sure my kids get what they need, right? And not lose my cool in those situations. And if I do make a mistake, actually apologizing, I think it's powerful when parents apologize on occasion to their kids. So that's what I mean. That's what I think is so important about farming, and that kind of, we didn't even think about talking about, we didn't prepare for that. We didn't even think about that, but it is a very powerful comparison and principle. And I think it's exactly what parenting is all about.
Yeah. Well, and it's growth. When you plant seeds, sure, whatever you're planting will grow. Yeah.
And you don't see the fruit for a long time. Like, you might see some changes, but it's not really about getting to a destination with parenting. It's the journey, right? It's raising them.
That's awesome. So as you say that, you describe a lot of patience that you have to have in order to actually make that journey. How do you develop that patience if you don't naturally have it? Did you naturally have that patience, or did that evolve for you?
I'll say this, and I'll let Ashley answer. For me personally, that was a weakness for me. I did not have patience. Very short-tempered, something I had to kind of fix early on in our marriage before we started having kids. I'd snap at little things, things would irritate me because, right when you get married or right before you get married, you're very selfish just by nature, because you're not used to living with somebody. You're not used to taking care of anybody else but yourself. And so as you're a parent, you have to learn very quickly extreme patience. So it did not come easy to me. That's definitely a strength that Ashley had in the beginning. For me, I had to learn that process of patience kind of the hard way. So how about you?
I think we all have to keep growing in those areas. I don't think anyone's ever arrived. I mean, maybe I had more patience than he did, but I definitely wasn't where I wanted to be. I've lost my cool. I've regretted things big time. But you know what? You don't dwell on those things. You just learn from them and you don't repeat them. And it's like, it's just like modeling and demonstrating. If you mess up, it's important for your kids to hear you tell each other that you're sorry and that you were in the wrong, or to tell them, hey, will you forgive me? I messed up. Like, moms and dads make mistakes too. Husbands and wives make some mistakes too. And that models that for them. So I've I think that too is a process. I think growing, I honestly think that people, all of us, we're all flawed. None of us are perfect. None of us have arrived. And I think personal development is really important. I don't think that it's the only thing that you do. I don't think you get stuck in personal development, but I think that it is important that you work on growing yourself, even if it's not a weakness of yours, but to, just to keep evolving. So I think it's a constant process in itself.
That's great. You talk about working on growing yourself. Before, earlier in the interview, the first thing you mentioned before you even talked about modeling was mentoring, right? And you talked about how influential that has been for you in your journey. Is mentoring part of that personal growth that you talk about? And what else contributes to that for you?
Yeah, I mean, mentoring has changed our life. I've heard this saying before, and I think it applies. If you have one mentor, you're blessed. If you have two mentors, you are in the minority. You're extremely blessed, right? I think there's a key reason, because a mentor does not find you, you seek out to mentor. And once you understand that principle, then you realize that the reason you don't have more than one mentor in your life in a particular area is because you're not trying to find one. You're trying to do it all yourself. And so our mentor, one of our mentors in our life right now, says that he has, that actually it's a couple, but they have a mentor spiritually, financially, mentally, for emotional strength and things like that. They wouldn't go to their financial mentor to talk about how to raise their kids. Doesn't make any sense, and vice versa, right? So I think you have to seek people out, not just for advice. I've heard people give some terrible advice, and it's because they got asked, somebody asked them a question that was serving them in one role, and they gave them advice in another area, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So we feel like mentorship is so important because it takes the you out of the equation, and it allows you to seek out something that somebody else knows a lot more about you than you do on that particular subject. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely with that.
So it sounds like you also have to be willing to sit in the seat of a learner, to be humble,
yes,
in order to benefit from having a mentor.
100%. Absolutely.
We got married in our 20s. I was barely 22. Brian's a lot older than me.
Yeah, right. A whole 3.5 years.
Sure. But anyway, we round up with him. But we got married young, and we kind of did it backwards. We actually fostered kids before we had our own biological children. It was just the way the cards fell, and just something that we decided to follow. And so we didn't really seek out mentorship. We were young. We were just trying to do the best that we can do. We were focused on our careers. But I think as we, having an older child in the beginning, and then also having babies behind the older child, like, we just did it a little backwards. And so I think we realized some things maybe a little faster, right? Because older kids can talk to you more than, babies can. So we got to a point where we were open, and we wanted to grow, and we wanted to improve, and we just knew we couldn't do it on our own. And I mean, aside from mentorship, like, we are believers, like, our faith is very important to us. And so I think the number one important thing to me individually, and I could probably speak for Brian on this as a couple, is that, God is who we go to for direction, but he also speaks through people, I believe. This is just my personal opinion and belief. And so I think being coachable, and I just don't think we started out that way, but we just kind of morphed and transitioned, and I think grew to that area where we wanted, and we sought it out, and we could benefit from it.
That's awesome. So how long have you been married and how many kids? You said you have 3. How old are your kids?
Let's see, 18, 8, and 7, and we've been married for 14 years.
Okay.
And our 18-year-old we adopted.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want peace in your family relationships instead of conflict? Do you want a safe, loving marriage instead of one that is failing? Are you troubled about what's happening with your children and need help for them? At Legacy Changers Counseling Centers, the goal is to strengthen individuals and families with cutting-edge emotional and mental health interventions. The exceptionally trained counselors at Legacy provide the specialized guidance you need in a safe environment of belonging so that you can make the life changes you and your loved ones need. Get real help for your emotional and relationship needs. Call today at 404-334-7575. That's 404-334-7575. You can also find us on the web at legacychangerscounseling.com. Call now and transform your life today. 404-334-7575 or legacychangerscounseling.com.
So what is another principle that you both live by, that you feel strengthens your family and your marriage as well? I mean, we talk a lot about family, but a lot of the principles that you're talking about are not just relevant to strong families. They're relevant to strong marriages, which have to happen before you even can think about a strong family unit.
Mm. Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about this already in some ways, but our biblical principles and being Christians, not just the title Christian, but following Christ in our walk, in our marriage, in how we raise our kids is so important. From a marriage standpoint,
First.
yeah, when you have to follow God first, and you have to live out the biblical principles the way that they're written, as well as the way that they're taught, the right way, it does a very funny thing to your marriage. It takes you, again, out of the equation, and it makes it to where he comes first. So then once he comes first and you have to obey him first, he's teaching love is his number one principle, right? And unconditional love, being selfless. And so if you don't do that, you are not only dishonoring your wife, but you're also dishonoring God. So I can't tell you how many times early on in my marriage where I was so mad at her, and then God would like kind of speak to me on something, and we'd be in an argument or whatever, and he would speak to me, and like I would realize that like what my faults were, and I stopped thinking about what she did, right? So I think that's the first thing, is that it completely transforms your mindset, whether you know God before you're married or not. It's once you start following him, that's what happens. And then another part of that is raising kids, right? I'll say this and then I'll let Ashley talk, is that this changed my entire parenting look. When I realized that God looks at me like, or I'm supposed to look at my kids the way that God looks at me and the way that God raises me, it changed everything. Because I realized, when my kid runs out in the street and is about to get hit by a car chasing after a ball, he wants the ball. All he's focused on is the ball, but he doesn't see a huge truck coming that could take his life, right? Where God's looking down at me and going, stop it, you dummy. I've told you like 15 different ways. Stop doing that, right? You're going the wrong direction. You're about to get hit by whatever, and this is going to hurt you and you're hurt your family. And I'm not listening to him because I'm just ignoring him, right? It's the same principle. So,
yeah.
No, it's actually really true.
Yeah.
I think that just for us personally, I mean, every family is different. Everybody's different, but we came from 2 very different backgrounds, similar backgrounds, but very different belief backgrounds.
That's true.
And really, like, when you kind of take, because religion, I feel, is man-made. you know, your faith and your beliefs and your morals and your values, you know, comes from something deep within, and whatever you determine, and our beliefs and values, we just are guided by those, and we put that first, even above, you know, what we talked about originally, modeling. That's just something that we learned to do, and it's worked. But I think for us personally, that's the most important thing, is we had to learn that we couldn't do it all by ourselves. Like, we really did have to. I mean, it's in the word. Like, I didn't make it up. Like, that's just what God said to do. So when we surrendered and started doing that, then we've done it with and we've done it without, and I prefer much more with. So
that's right.
For our family, it works, and you know, it's made a big difference.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So is there anything else that you might want to tell folks listening that may be struggling with some of the things that you talked about, modeling for their children consistently, and being patient to wait for the outcome, and being teachable, coachable, and getting mentoring in the spaces where they're weaker, as well as even in spaces where they may be stronger, and having a central life principle like your faith that guides everything, and that is the lens that you see everything through. People who are struggling with these things, what would you say to them if they're just struggling? They're going, oh, I don't know that I can do what you've done and figure it out the way that you figured it out.
I think in regards to mentorship, you know, it's important that whoever you are listening to and whoever you are seeking that guidance from, one, has a vested interest in you for the good, and two, actually is where you want to be.
Yes.
So if they don't have the things that you want, if they have not had a very stable demonstration of that, right, then, I mean, I would not recommend that's the kind of mentorship I would recommend somebody go after. And like Brian said earlier, it's really, a mentor doesn't find you, you find the mentor. And something else I would say is, we all struggle. I mean, Brian and I, we almost got a divorce, you know, after, I don't know, 9-10 years, because we were struggling. I mean, I don't know who doesn't after they've been together and they've been through some stuff, right? Because that's just life. But I think staying humble and really, whatever your faith or belief is, for ours, we said what it is personally. I mean, if you can get on your knees and ask God, you know, to help you, and just say, I can't do it on my own, I need your help, then, you know, things have moved and transitioned in our life. And I think a lot of times people will carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, and they are trying to do it by themselves, right? And trying to act like everything is great. But here's the secret. Really, everybody's struggling. Everybody's in all the areas you think that they have it all together.
That's right.
Everybody's messed up, and we just have things that have happened. And so, I mean, Brian and I have been through more than most people would even believe. I mean, we've been through trauma after trauma after trauma, loss after loss after loss. We could probably write a book, and we're pretty young, but I mean, we've been hit hard. But the thing is, we just keep going, and we've stuck together.
That's right.
And, you know, 2 is better than 1. It's so true. If you're not fighting each other, and something that was spoken over us, and we were, something that was spoken over us this year was to put our backs together and to fight back to back. Not fight each other, but fight back to back. Because when you can fight back to back, you literally can do you can see everything, right? And they said, this person spoke over, said, who's watching your kids when you're fighting each other? Who's watching your kids? Who's looking after them, right? Because things can creep in. So if you can get back to back, right, you're just more powerful. And if you don't let your weaknesses or your strengths be used against you, but you can say, okay, this is your strength and these are my strengths, and we put those, because he has strengths that I don't have and I have strengths that he doesn't have. And so when you have someone that you're doing life with, don't fight that for the control or for the get ahead. Really recognize what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. Ask for help, seek out people who are where you want to be, and develop yourself. And my best advice is put God first, because that's what he says. And I've done it without.
And I'll just add this last thing is that I think for men, we all know that men should be present for their kids. That's kind of an obvious thing. But I've learned that don't just be there, but do the things that your kids really enjoy with them. So there's things that my son does that I don't feel like doing half the time, right? Because I'm exhausted from whatever work or, got crazy stuff going on that day. But if something lights him up and he gets really excited about it, I'm going to do it with him, right? Because that's all he wants. His love language is time with dad. And I feel like that's what most people overlook, that's really what kids are looking for is time with mom and dad, or time with mom or time with dad, whether the household, the situation, even if you're a single parent, it's like they're looking for time with the parent. And they think if I buy them more stuff, or if I do this, or if I go on a vacation because mom's been disconnected. Look, vacations are exhausting. Okay. And let's just be real. When you take them to Disney World, you are done, right? And yes, they might have that experience and enjoy it, but you got to spend time with them. Yeah. And even in our biggest struggles of financial hardship in our past, in our marriage, we had some of our best moments when money wasn't there, but we were with each other, And so if somebody's financially in a rock bottom place, that's when things can feel the hardest, but know that that's probably going to be one of the closest that you'll ever be with your kids. And they will remember every one of those moments, whether you make it good or bad.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being part of this process, and for sharing your story, and for sharing the principles that have worked for you, and just for being willing to be vulnerable and to share your journey. So I really appreciate it. And I look forward to being able to share this with people as well, and how it will help them.
It was an honor. Thank you for having us and for asking us to be a part. We definitely have not arrived, and we have a long way to go. But, right now we're surviving. We're making it through. So,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely. That's part of the journey. You just got to survive and keep going, keep making it through.
Keep swimming.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Sutherland. Thanks for listening today, and I hope you'll join us again at this same time next week. If this information has been helpful, like us and share on Facebook at Legacy Changers Worldwide. You can also find other shows and resources to strengthen your mental health and family wellness at www.legacychangersworldwide.com, and by subscribing to Dr. Sonja Sutherland on YouTube. I'm in your corner and always hoping the best for you. I'll see you next week.